Hey, listeners, we're going to jump right back into part two of Jen's interview with guitarist and music expert Robert Neff. Enjoy.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to transition into my first pick, which is also a song that you brought to the show by an artist that we are both like super geeking out over right now. This song is called Hardworking Man by Marcus King. So this album came out in August, I think late August of this year, and it's called Young Blood. And I mean, I think I'm trying to remember how I was introduced to Marcus King. I had heard his version of the Gnarls Barkley song "Crazy," actually, which is totally like once you hear "Hardworking Man," if you're not familiar with Marcus King, you're going to be like, he covered the Gnarls Barkley song "Crazy." Like, what? How did that work? But he did. It was from his Spotify sessions, and I heard that, and I was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? And then when you like told me about this song, I went in and like did a deep dive for the whole album and was just like, I can't. I mean, this is
Yes.
so good. Like, and the thing I will say before I like let you jump in on this one, because I know you love it too, is like when you're listening to this song, listeners, my only request is like turn it up to 11. Like
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, like listen so loud that you upset your neighbors. It sounds so good at top volume.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hashtag cowbell, you know.
Right. Yes,
So
yes.
the so he's so talented, and like you were saying, he on that Spotify session, he speaks to his more soul R&B, which he just, man, he can sing. So I'm not a jealous type person, and I've been playing guitar for 37 years. He is a stellar guitar player, and we would be talking about him just for his guitar playing. And I'm jealous that he's such a stellar singer, and
Yeah.
he's that in one person. I'm always jealous of, guitar players that can sing. I can't sing. And the fact that he can do both. And he's such an interesting cat. He's really humble. He's 26. He's released 5 albums.
Wow.
The last two, this one and the one before, were with Dan Auerbach. His third album is called Carolina Confessions. That one's got a couple just amazing songs. This new release really feels like an album too, and that song is the one that every time I listen to that album, and that album hit me when I was doing a lot of car travel, and it was just like as soon as it was done, I'm like, I want to hear it again, And
Yeah.
then, but Hardworking Man was just so catchy, and from a guitar standpoint, he's a third generation guitarist. His
Wow.
grandfather and his dad were both professional guitar players. Well, his grandfather like played in the church and stuff, but gigged some. His dad gigged like for part of their income. Um, his grandfather gave him a highly coveted vintage instrument, when he was in 16 or so, and that's his main guitar. He plays a 1963 Gibson ES 335. I mean, that's one of the more coveted vintage instruments, and he's from Greenville, South Carolina, so he's got that southern thing, and this was his second album with Dan Auerbach, and he Dan Auerbach actually brings in people to like help with the songwriting and stuff too, all because they're in Nashville, so they got access to all these amazing people, and but they really knocked this one out in a short time, and you can tell it was recorded live, straight to tape, and he gigs a lot as modern musicians have to. I mean, his band's super tight, and the album is, you know, it's so fun. It's there's no skippers on this album. So
I agree. I agree. I love this one too. I think the Young Blood album is his best out of the five that we've mentioned. I love this one. It kind of has like some ZZ Top vibes too. Like I get that a little bit, which I love. And then definitely like it has Dan Auerbach's stamp all over it. And for those that are not familiar, Dan Auerbach is one half of the Black Keys, and a prolific producer. I feel like the 2000s, or at least the 2010s and on till now, have been dominated by like Dan Auerbach and Jack Antonoff, like producing everyone, right? Like,
Right, for sure. And
but
Dave
this
Cobb
one,
too. Dave
oh
Cobb's
yeah,
been
yeah.
killing it.
Yep. And it's been, I mean, and I feel like they're great pairings, right? Like I can't imagine a better person to produce Marcus King than Dan Auerbach. Like they are such a match made in heaven to me. And I think that's why I love this album, because they sound like such a perfect pairing.
And the guitar playing on the album is phenomenal, but like I said, his singing is phenomenal too. And um, the album, he is the guitar tones are just crazy good, and he uses a fuzz pedal for non-guitar players, and these are some of the best recorded fuzz tones I've heard in the last 10 plus years. It The only other guy that really can work a fuzz pedal that well is Doyle Bramhall II.
Mm,
But yeah, you know he just when he was talking about this album, it was just he just wanted to go in and knock one out that spoke to what he grew up with just essentially classic rock, and
yeah.
like I said, he played his first gig when he was 8. Yeah,
Me
it's
too.
just
Me
you
too.
know
I hosted my first podcast when I was 8, everyone. Yeah, I mean, you can tell the kid's just amazingly talented. The album is so good. If you've not checked it out, I mean, hopefully all of this praise heaped on it in the last 7 minutes will encourage you to do so. Like it is well worth the listen. It was one of my favorite albums of the year, even though it's not been out all that long. I think it's just so good. Um, and with that, I'm going to take us in for the big finish, Robert. My last pick to end this episode is a song called White Braids and Pillow Chair by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, Red Hot Chili Peppers, like we spoke before we started recording, like this year and probably next year too, have been so great for music, because when everybody was trapped in their house during pandemic, like people wrote, they thought, they collaborated, they got together. And so I think that we got so much amazing music that came out of that time. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers have been like insane. Like how many they've released, like 2 albums and some singles over the last, oh, I think just this year, right?
So they John Frusciante's back in the band. This is the third
Yeah.
time he's rejoined, and the world was excited for this. No disrespect to Josh Klinghoffer, who held it down for 2 albums, but all their great work has been with John Frusciante since Mother's Milk on.
Yeah.
Um, they released a double. This is off the double album Unlimited Love, which came out in April and had 17 songs.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't enough, they finished their world tour in September, and I was lucky enough to go to that in Dallas. It finished in Dallas, and my sister got tickets, and I got to take my teenage daughters. They were more excited
Amazing.
about the Strokes opening, but they enjoyed it. And then in October, they released a second double album called Return of the Dream Canteen, also with 17 songs. That's 34 songs. And of those 34 songs, I think there's only one that shouldn't have was like a thumbs down. They should have, why did they put that one on there? And then they just a few weeks ago they released one more song. But
Yeah.
they've been working with Rick Rubin since the Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which is one of my top 10 albums of all time. And they commonly record up to 50 songs and usually narrow it down to one album. And they're just so on on point with this. And the reason I love this song so much, but just in general, Unlimited Love, I'm still getting to know the one that just came out in October.
Yeah.
But it's so good, and they're just all 4 of them are so at the peak of their game. Um, and I've I was lucky enough to find the Chili Peppers in 1985 when I started playing guitar. So I had a wonderful older brother from another mother that was 4 years older, and he hit me to so much great stuff. And
Yep.
I was listening to Freaky Styley when I was in high school and Uplift Mofo Party Plan. And we've talked about it before. If you're not on board with the singer, you can't be on board with the band.
Yep.
And Anthony is not the greatest singer in the world, but I've grown up with him for the last 35 years, and when he was just a punk funk band, and then when John Frusciante joined the band from Mother's Milk, then they were like a rock funk band. But when they got to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, they had Under the Bridge, which is their biggest hit. And that was the first time that Anthony really tried to sing. And he said he was even embarrassed to bring that and sing that in front of his band, you know.
Yeah.
So, but you can just tell on this Unlimited Love album that he worked so hard on the vocals. It's his best vocal performance, on an album. And
I
they're 40 years
100%
into their
agree.
career.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Anthony Kiedis' voice in this song is fire. And it's actually why I picked this song over The Shape I'm Taken, which is the single they just released. And I also am in love with. So it was really close. Whenever I saw this one, I was like, oh, I love this one, but I also love The Shape I'm Taken. His voice in this one is so fantastic that I'm like, yeah, we're going to go with White Braids and Pillow Chair, because I think that this is just like, and it's so, for me, I'm like you. I grew up with the Chili Peppers. I first heard Freaky Styley in high school because I had friends that were into the Chili Peppers, and this has always been a point of departure for you and I. My favorite Chili Peppers album is hands down Mother's Milk. I know you love Blood Sugar Sex Magic. It's a great album, but Mother's Milk is my all-time favorite. Definitely one of my top 10 albums. And Taste the Pain is my favorite Chili Peppers song. So
That's a
I
great one.
kind of have to like nod. I think that might be, but I love, really, I can't, no skip album 100 times. Like I've been listening for, like you said, 30 years, 35 years to Mother's Milk, and I still never skip a song. So
So
this felt like going back to like Chili Peppers that I love, love, love.
Yeah, and just back to the musicianship, Chad Smith has been the drummer since Mother's Milk. Flea is, one of the best bassists in the world. John Frusciante is, I think the closest thing to a modern Hendrix that we have. He's really tapped into whatever's he can feel, he can convey, and he really is the songwriting genius behind the scenes. If you just look at how they just kind of flew under the radar for a decade while Josh Klinghoffer was in the band, and then he finally
Yeah.
came back, and it seems like he's grown a lot. I've read Anthony Kiedis' memoir, and we almost
Yeah.
lost Anthony to heroin. We almost lost John. Just so glad that they made it. And speaking of podcasts, Rick Rubin's Broken Record podcast, he
Mhm.
interviews each member of the band individually. He
Oh,
interviewed
wow.
either they broke it into two or they did two sessions with John Frusciante because each one's over an hour, and they've all been working together, since 1991, and so they have this wonderful camaraderie, of knowing each other. And if you're a Chili Peppers fan, it's a must listen. Or if you're just curious about this song, um, one of the episodes is with John Frusciante and Anthony, and Anthony tells the story behind the lyrics to White Braid and Pillow Chair. So if you
Oh,
if you Google, Rick Rubin, Anthony Kiedis, John Frusciante podcast, you'll find it.
okay.
And it's just often you don't know. I love Anthony's lyrics. I often don't know what the heck
Yes.
he's talking about, but it sounds cool. And the they go super deep into their writing process, and um, it's if you're a musician or interested in songwriting, it's really fascinating because you don't get that level of deepness. And this is with the person that they kind of co-created it with and recorded it and brought it to the masses. So they're just so generous with their time, and they have such camaraderie. Really, really, all the interviews with Rick Rubin are really fun.
Well, and I think that's something too. We talk, I think on last episode, it's come up a lot before. Don Sento and I talk about it whenever he's on the show about like a family band and sort of that blood harmony and how it sounds different. Now, even though these guys are not technically family, they sound like a family band to me, right? Like they have their harmonies and the way they play together are so tight. They've been doing it together for so long that you really do sort of get the feeling that they're brothers, you know? And
Absolutely. And when they found out that, John wanted to come back, they weren't like, you dissed us twice before. They were like, yes, we we miss our brother.
yes,
And
come back.
the from a rhythm section, you know, drums, bass, guitar, it's, they're the modern Jimmy Page, Jean Paul Jones, John Bonham. I mean, Chad
Yep.
Smith's, I'm always blown away by Chad Smith's drumming. It's just perfect for the
Yep.
song. It's always funky. His drum sounds are just epic. It just and he's so funny. And he looks just like Will Ferrell, but
I was going to say, and he looks exactly like Will
they
Ferrell, which
really
is
do
also
look like
hilarious.
twin brothers
They
separated at
do.
birth. Is pretty funny. But
They do.
he's that's the funniest, fun one to listen to because just the whole story of him joining the Chili Peppers is hilarious. And they go into
Yeah.
that.
What's funny is like Chili Peppers is one of those bands, like they've been with me forever. I will always love them. Like I said, Mother's Milk, I go back to time and time again. And then they have this weird period for me where, living in Southern California for 15 years, as I did, you did your time in SoCal. They're like the unofficial band of Los Angeles, I feel like. And
Yeah.
so they get played so much. So really anything from like One Hot Minute or the Californication album or Stadium Arcadium, like I'm okay. I don't really need to hear those a lot anymore because I heard them so much. Like I can go to my grave never hearing Danny California again and be like super happy about it, right? And they're a band that continues to evolve, right? So anytime they drop something new, I'm there for it because I feel like they just are constantly trying to be a better band. And they're one that could sit back and just be like, we're the freaking Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, we're just going to do what we do and that's it. And they don't. They come back, they deliver something new, they bring you something that sounds as strong as their early stuff and is as fresh as you want it to be for new. I mean, when I first heard the intro to this song, I thought I was listening to a Weezer song, right? It
Right.
sounds a little like Weezer. And you're like, wait a minute, this is the Chili Peppers. So it's really, I think if you haven't listened to the music that they've released this year, you really have to go back. Or if you were, burnt out by songs that got overplayed, like go back and check out the albums that they've released this year because they really, I mean, this is some of the best stuff I've heard from them in a long time.
Absolutely. And with their writing process, it's really fascinating. And um, though I've only read about a few bands that do this, but Tool records basically the entire album without vocals, and then they pass it on to Maynard, and he fits the vocals in. And it's so hard to imagine when you listen to that they weren't working as a team and
Yeah.
knowing what he was going to do, and that he fits into these complicated songs. So, but it sounds like more than half of the songs on the Chili Peppers were like that as well. Like they maybe had a
Wow.
scratch melody, or maybe he just scatted over it or whatever, but it wasn't, he wasn't finished with the lyrics or whatever. And some of them they just, left space for him. But he went to Hawaii to Rick Rubin's recording studio on the mountain, craziness, and spent
Right.
a whole month working on the vocals on
Wow.
Unlimited Love.
So
So,
good. And you can tell.
yep, yep.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for sharing what you're listening to this week. And remember, we'll be back next week with the second half of my discussion with Robert. And if you're not already, be sure to follow and download What Are You Listening To? And you can keep track of all things Super Awesome Mix on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.